Borough's season finally comes crashing to an end, with Coventry beating us on the final day and beating us to the playoffs. What is up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Project Boro, the final game review of the season. And the sad thing about this was that it was the predictable result, wasn't it? It was the result, it was the outcome Boro fans were all expecting to happen following Coventry's record against Boro, Boro's form this season in big games. It's quite sad in a way that it was as predictable as this. And it was quite sad in a way that, and quite telling, that a lot of Boro fans went into this game kind of already resigned to the outcome. You know, fans are wondering, well, why aren't Boro fans excited? Why aren't they up for it? Why aren't they more optimistic? It's because the unfortunate, sad reality of this team this season is that we all sort of thought this outcome was going to come. You know, in the big moments, in the big games, Boro always just fall short, and that was what happened here today at the CBS. And again, all results went Boro's way. A win would have got us into the top six. Burnley did the job against Millwall. Blackburn failed to beat Sheffield United. Bristol City even had a struggle at home to Preston. So, as it has been for a lot of this season, it was all there for Boro. It was all right there for us, but we failed to capitalise on results going elsewhere, and we fell short, and the season is done. And to be honest, I'm relieved. That's my overarching emotion. I'm not disappointed, I'm not gutted, I'm not furious, I'm not annoyed. I'm relieved. I'm relieved that this season has finally came to an end, and the outcome I think we all expected has come true. We've been pulled in limbo, in and out with this team for weeks now. Will we, won't we? Every time we've took a step forward and thought we were going to make it, we've then took two steps back because of how inconsistent we've been. And every time teams around us have stumbled over one another and we've had an open chance to take a step forward and take the lead in the playoff race, we've failed to do so. So I'm relieved that it's all over. I'm relieved that it's all done, and we will get in to where this has left Boro, and we will attempt to dissect this season and what needs to come of it in the coming days, in the next week. I'll obviously have a little chat about where Boro have finished and my thoughts on where we should go in today's video, but I will be joined by Chris at some point in the upcoming week, and we will sit down and have a full-on Project Boro podcast trying to discuss and dissect what on earth has gone wrong with this Boro side this season. But before we have a look at the result, which, as I say, was kind of predictable, the actual result of that is quite damning. And it looks like this because this result has Boro 10th, which is awful, really. In a league as weak as this and a playoff race as weak as this, for Boro to finish 10th, I think is shocking. You know, behind West Brom, Millwall, Blackburn and Bristol City, I think that's inexcusable. And we'll have a look at Carrick, the squad, and what we think should happen next when we get to the end of the video. But let's get the game out the way first, because I don't really want to talk about it for all that much time. The starting 11 showed a degree of promise. I mean, there was no sign really that Carrick, no one expected him to massively change his system or throw in a curveball that was going to massively catch out Frank Lampard and Coventry City. But there were a few changes in there. The biggest positive was that he moved Samuel Illing Jr. forwards to a attacking role. That's something I asked for in my preview, which I was delighted to see. He did bring Borges in as a left back as opposed to putting him in to the back two, keeping Dijksteel on the right, keeping Howson in the centre of defence. The rest of the team pretty much was as we sort of expected it to be, if we're honest. I thought it was an evenish game, defined by big moments, and as is the way with Boro, unfortunately, we were on the wrong side of them big moments. As we expected, Coventry started the game quickly. The atmosphere was rampant. It was a cauldron within the CBS, and it was massive that Boro got themselves through that first 20 minutes. Coventry come at us at a rate of knots, bombarded Boro's goal, had a few shots, there was crosses, there was blocks. Boro were really under it in the first 20 minutes, and I thought we did well to get through it. but we never really offered all that much going the other way, and that was the biggest disappointment of the first half. We had a few odd moments. The biggest came from Finn Azaz when he had a shot that was tipped on at the post by Ben Wilson, who is a substitute goalkeeper who came in for Coventry today. It was a big call from Frank Lampard, and I think it was a very, very brave one, and one that paid off because I thought Ben Wilson was absolutely fantastic for them between the sticks today. But had a few big moments, but that was it. It was few and far between, really. The game was mostly played in Boro's half. It was mostly Coventry on the front foot. Boro were mostly defending their box, and it did look like if any team was to open the scoring, it was likely going to be Coventry, and that was what happened. And unfortunately for Boro, had we gotten into half-time at 0-0, you regroup and go again, and who knows, but we happened to concede at the worst possible time, really. The 44th minute, Jack Radoni puts Coventry in front, and it was a poor goal to concede, really. It's very damning, and it's very Boro to concede a goal such as this. Dijksteel, initially, about 30 seconds prior, decided to step into midfield and try and get past Haji Wright, which was never going to happen. He was out muscle. He lost the ball in a dangerous area. They play the ball out to the right-hand side. Sakamoto crosses it in with his left foot. Johnny Howson, who, I think for the most part did well today, but he will massively be disappointed with his part to play in Coventry's goal because he sat so much deeper than the rest of his defenders. He basically gives Jack Radoni a yard free in Boro's box, and he's able to head it unchallenged into the far corner, and that's the biggest disappointment about the goal. Two big mistakes, Dijksteel losing possession in the first place, Howson stepping back and not being close enough to his man, and Coventry got the big goal that they needed, give them a big boost going into half-time, and it gave Boro a mountain to climb because, of course, Boro then had to do something that we'd only done on two separate occasions this season, and that was win from behind, and it was always a very unlikely mountain to climb at that point for Boro. We did step it up second half. We did, I think, get on the front foot. The tempo was better. We looked more of a threat. We did carve open some huge opportunities. There were two big moments for me that, had they gone a different way, we might be looking at a different outcome. But as I say, in them big moments, Boro failed to deliver the goods. I thought we had a sort of 10-minute spell. You can sort of see it with the momentum. It was around the hour mark where I thought Boro were massively on top. And it was one of the rare times in the game where we really had Coventry on the ropes. I think other than that, yeah, both sides had moments, and especially towards the end of the game, it did get very end-to-end and very frenetic, which you'd expect in a game like this. But I think that was the only real spell where Boro really had Coventry creaking and wobbling, and we just didn't, unfortunately, take advantage. I thought to myself at around that hour, if Boro are going to get anything out of this game, we had to score then. We had to take advantage then, but we didn't. The big moment came to Finn Azaz, Boro's biggest goal contributor this season. You'd put your mortgage on him converting. Cross coming from the right-hand side, it finds its way to Finn Azaz. Anywhere, left or right, and it's a goal. But he puts it straight at Ben Wilson, who parries it away. That was the biggest moment. There were still others, Whittaker hit the post for us. Asante hit the post for them. There were big blocks at both ends, but that was the big moment, which had Boro gone level with half an hour to go, you have to say the momentum would have swung massively, and then it would have been a big test of Coventry's defence and character at that point. But that was the moment, that was the sliding doors moment for me, where we had to score, we didn't, and it allowed Coventry to not gain full control back, but they were able to settle once again and control the game, in that brief spell of dominance from Boro passed by. But there still was one other huge chance in the second half, and it fell to Delano Bergzorg. Inan Jr. had a decent one. He just sort of couldn't get it out of his feet. It was low and straight at the goalkeeper, but Delano Bergzorg found himself in so much space in and around the edge of Coventry's box, and he just has to place it in the far corner. He's got the time, he's got the space, but there's no composure, there's no quality. He leans back, he puts it over the bar. That could have been another moment, albeit later in the game, which could have just made Coventry think. It could have just gave them that little bit of nerves, that little bit of anxiety. But Boro simply never took their moments, and Coventry made sure in the second half. Jack Radoni once again, towards the end of the game, made absolutely sure. And I thought Thomas Asante was a fantastic substitute from Frank Lampard, because what he did, he gave Borough's defence something to think about. When the game's stretched, he gave them an out ball. He gave them someone who could spin in behind, get Borough's defenders turning and running in the opposite direction. I thought he was a fantastic substitute by Frank Lampard. The ball's played into him. He out-muscles Dale Fry and gets away from him. Fry's legs by this point had absolutely gone. Squares it to Radoni. Giles gets back in but doesn't quite get back in time. And Jack Radoni seals the deal. And Borough's fate was sealed in that moment. Coventry 2, Boro 0. And the CBS erupts with Coventry celebrations. And not for the first time in the last few seasons, Boro, at the expense of Coventry, their season was finished. And we have to sit back and watch the opposition celebrating the jubilance and the fact that they'd made the playoffs at our expense and that we had failed. And in typical Boro fashion, we had to sit back and watch the very team that we were up against celebrate the one thing we'd bottled and failed to achieve. And of course, of all the teams in the league, it had to be Coventry. And it was the outcome. You could see it written. It was almost written in the stars. From the moment that Coventry made that fantastic comeback and got ahead of us in the league and established themselves in the playoff places, we all looked instantly towards this final day and we all thought, it's coming down to this. It 100% is coming down to this game, regardless of how good we were, bad they were, the fact they've lost 2 games, the fact they could have been in by now had they beaten Luton or Plymouth, the fact we could have been in by now had we beaten Norwich or Sheffield Wednesday. It was always going to come down to this, and the outcome was always going to be the same. And as I said at the start, it's kind of sad that Boro fans almost could predict that the outcome was this. We know our team so well. We know their shortcomings so well. We all knew it was coming down to this game, and we all knew we would fall short. And that's exactly what happened. And it petered out, and Boro's season was done. And as I said, down to results going elsewhere. Had we won, we'd have gotten in. But as we've said, we never at any point have deserved the playoffs. It was a miracle we were even within a chance on the final day, and we didn't get what we deserved. Coventry changed their manager, had an outstanding run of consistent results after that, won 9 in 10. They deserve it. They've gotten over the line. Boro haven't strung more than 3 wins in a row together at any point this season. We did it once in November. Other than that, we've struggled for consistency all season long. Credit for Coventry for making the change and finding the consistency and getting over the line eventually. Same for Bristol City. Congratulations to them. They've had stellar home form this season, and although they've sort of struggled over the line, their home form's been brilliant for the most part, and they deserve to get in there as well. And before we sort of dissect the league table and look ahead, a couple of little bits stats-wise. As you can see, it was a game that Coventry edged. Boro did have more shots and shots on target, but the quality of chances that Coventry had with the XG proves that they had the better of the opportunities, and they had more big chances than what Boro did as well. They had 6 big chances according to FootMob, which is a huge amount, which shows that maybe the game should have been put away sooner than it was, but Boro simply didn't take their opportunities when they came in the game. A look at Boro's lineup. I mean, again, a Neely team full of Neely players. Travers again made some good saves to keep us in it at times. It's a shame, really, that, I don't know how likely it's going to be, whether he's here next season or not. I really don't know, but yeah, he was decent between the sticks, as he always is. I thought Howson did really well, made some really big blocks and interceptions at times. Let himself down, though, with the goal that we conceded. It seems like, with his reaction after the game, the way he was waving goodbye to Boro fans, how he was when he come off, it looks like that's it. And it's one of them, isn't it? It's heart over your head over your heart. I think my heart tells me that I'd like him to sign on, because I simply feel like we need him. And he's not put many feet wrong. I mean, he's still made mistakes, but everyone has in this team, and he certainly gave us all with this run-in. And I think with the amount of turnover that will happen in Boro's squad, we maybe need as much continuity as possible. So that's an argument for maybe keeping House in front of the season. But then my head tells me Boro need to raise the floor of this team massively, and we can't be in a position where we need to rely on Johnny Howson in the summer and next season. So I don't know what's going to happen there. I think there'll be a lot of other other external factors, wages are another that might determine what Boro do there. Fry was okay. Dijksteel, he had some good moments but some bad moments. It was a very Dijksteel performance, but of course his contract's done now. I don't think he'll play again in a Boro shirt, and that will be it for Anthony Dijksteel. Borges struggled a bit, as is the way with him at left back, and I think it proves for me, if you want to get the best out of him going forward, you've got to play him in the middle as a left centre half for me. Morris and Hackney were all right. I think Morris was okay, struggled at times in the game, but we did go up against a very, very good midfield in Sheaf and Grimes. Hackney tried to drive us forward at times, but couldn't quite have the desired effect on the game. Morgan Whittaker had moments in the game. He hit the post second half, had a couple of opportunities, but it's just still not quite falling for him in a Boro shirt. So that's today just sort of summed up his time at Boro so far, and I really, really hope for his sake that he improves at Boro next season. Finn Azaz, another player who had big moments, hit the post first half, should have done better with the chance second half. Illing Jr., I don't think we got him in the game enough. We played him in the desired position on the left-hand side, further up the pitch as a left winger. Why we've not done it more recently, I don't know. Maybe it's the lack of a left-back, but we have had Jars there, but it was good to see him pushed forward. But we still, I don't think, utilised him well enough on that left-hand side, and he never quite had the desired effect that we would hope. Conway, as he has done in many of the games coming towards the end of this season, didn't ever really get into the game and never really had a key opportunity. Carrick did try a couple of substitutes. Delano Bergsog come on, had that big chance he spurned. Threw forwards on at the end with Iheanacho and Force coming on. Rav come on as well. Jars too, but none of them had the desired impact, which has been the case over the last few weeks. And as I say, it leaves Boro 10th in the Championship. And I don't think there's any dressing that up, if I'm honest. I know a lot said about January, a lot said about the recruitment, a lot said about selling Lath. And I agree, Michael Carrick has not been helped by the sale of his best players and hasn't been helped by a January that has made us more limited and has made us weaker. But the season is not played solely between the end of January and the start of May. It is played from August up to January and then after January, and it's a 46-game season. And regardless of what you want to say about the effect that January has or hasn't had, I don't see any excuse for why Boro, over a 46-game season, have finished behind West Brom, who have changed their manager 2 or 3 times this season. I don't think have a better squad than Boro. Millwall, a far inferior squad. Many of the squad that Millwall have are made up with players who've left Boro and weren't deemed good enough for Boro. Josh Coburn's went there on loan, Duncan Watmore, Liam Roberts, AJ Matthews. There's a ton of Boro players who've left for Millwall. There is no way that their team and squad is better than Boro's, but they've had a manager who's maximised the best out of it. There's no way they should be finishing above Boro. Same with Blackburn. If you look back to Boro's win at Blackburn a few weeks ago, which I was at, they were in disarray. There were protests. Their new manager hadn't won a game in 4. They have, again, nowhere near got a squad as good as Boro's. They've finished ahead of us. No dressing that up. And I don't even think there's any dressing up us being behind Bristol City either. I don't think their squad's better than Boro either. The only 2 teams in the top 6, take away Sheffield United, who I think, yeah, okay, maybe their squad's as good or better, is Sunderland and Coventry. But even then, should we be as far behind Sunderland as we are 12 points? I don't think so. The fact that we are 26 points, not even 26 points, 36 points off of the top 2 is incredible. And we've also lost 18 games. There is no dressing up the fact that we have lost 18 games this season. We have lost more games than Preston North End, who were fighting for their lives on the final day and could have got relegated. We've lost more games than them, and we've conceded more goals than Hull City, who almost got relegated themselves and only stayed up on goal difference at the expense of Luton Town. They are damning numbers that you simply cannot dress up. And another thing, a little bit of perspective for you Boro fans out there. We have finished on the same number of points with the same record as what Neil Warnock's Boro did in 2020-2021. Look at the screen. In 2020-2021, Boro finished 10th, as we have this season, with 18 wins, 10 draws, and 18 defeats. Look at the squad from 2021 and look at the squad that we have now. Once again, there is no excuse at all for why this Boro team should finish with 18 wins, 10 draws, and 18 defeats. The same that Warnock's team did in that season, and finish with more defeats than Preston, conceding more goals than Hull City. No excuses for me. It's not all on January. It is a collective issue. Don't get me wrong. Scott is at fault, but so is Michael Carrick. The players have to take massive responsibility also, 100%. But for me, that makes me look ahead and think, which part of this team do I want to keep? The manager. What the hell do Boro do going forward next season? Now, as I say, me and Chris will be back to dissect this deeper in the coming week. But for me, I can't excuse Michael Carrick. It's hard for me to say. You know, I've willed for him to do well. I really like the guy. But I just can't find an excuse for him. I really, really can't. You know, points-wise, season to season, we've regressed. Goals scored season to season, we've regressed. And in a championship as weak as this one, to finish where we have is simply inexcusable. It's been an abject fairly from top to bottom, and I'm not pinning the blame on any single one area of the team, squad or club. But for me, going into next season, we all know the turnover of players is going to be massive. So for me, we may as well look to the next manager. And as I've said, I don't want it to be a rip it up and start again job. I don't want us to go from the extremes of, as we did before, you know, Monk to, you know, Pulis to Monk to Wilder to Warnock to Carrick. I don't want us to have an extreme shift in style. And I think we've seen that Kieran Scott is always looking at managers who can step in and play a similar way to what Boro play and pick up a lot of the players and still play a similar way. I don't think we're ever going to be in a place where we're shifting it that drastically anymore. But I think we definitely have to look at the next manager who can come in, take what will be left of this team, a technically gifted side, but they need someone who's going to add them added layers that are going to make this Boro team a winning Boro team. Not just a pretty footballing side, which I still think at this point is a myth anyway. I don't think we've been a pretty footballing side for most of this season. We need a manager who's going to come in, is going to make this a winning team, a more adaptable team who can win and still play well when not at their best, can play in different ways, can win in different ways. They're more mentally tough. They've got maybe a bit more experience. They can just handle themselves better in them big moments when times get tough. Because unfortunately, I think this team is just full of too many nice, pretty footballers who, yeah, when they're 3-0 up against Oxford, all is well. But when they're 1-0 down at Millwall, their backs are against the wall at places like Coventry or Sheffield United, they just wilt and they can't quite handle it. So there's got to be changes wholesale from top to bottom, don't get me wrong. But I think the manager has to be one of them as well. And I just think if we give Carrick another summer of, you know, huge funds, I know people say if he's given more quality, there'll be a difference. But I don't think Carrick's interested in making this a solid, hard-to-beat defensive side. You know, we saw how the defence was neglected in January. You know, the sort of blasé, we'll be all right when letting Matt Clark go and not replacing him. You know, bringing in George Edmondson, who's not good enough. Ryan Giles, who's not good enough in defence. The defence was neglected massively in January. It was already a weakness, and it was made weaker, and they didn't seem to be bothered. Michael Carrick seems to only really be bothered about nice tippy-tappy, you know, fluent inverted wingers or attackers who can play in different positions. I don't trust that if we back him, he'll sign the players that I think we need to make this team go to that next level. So that's why I think a new manager has to be brought in, one that will maybe look to make this team a bit more rigid, a bit more experienced, a bit nastier, a bit more hard to beat. So I think that's why there needs to be changes from top to bottom, and it will certainly be interesting to see where Boro go from this moment. But that's it. That's the end. That's the predictable end to the season we all saw coming, and it ends a miserable season which has Boro finishing in a really, really poor position. And yeah, we don't deserve top 6. So we shouldn't have finished there. But to be 10th below a number of sides who we really shouldn't be, no disrespect to them, is nowhere near good enough. It just really, really isn't. So, as always, as I say, I'll be back later on in the week with Chris as we'll do a much bigger deep dive into what has gone wrong in what will be the final episode of Project Boro of the season, in what will be a longer podcast version. But I do want to, again, thank everyone who has jumped on board and watched the Project Boro review and preview shows this season. They've continued to go from strength to strength, and all that is down to you guys jumping on, viewing the videos, liking, subscribing, and supporting the channel. So a big thank you as always for that. The content's not done here though. As I say, there'll be more dissection of Boro's season. I'll be doing a lot of championship content, looking ahead to the playoffs. I'll be reviewing the league, I'll be grading all the sides, and a couple of other fun things, reacting to my league table predictions, among many other championship videos to come, before there probably will be a bit of a break throughout the summer, through June, I'll say, before we'll probably then look to come back in July to start to look ahead to whatever comes next. But of course, if there's any movement between now and then, whether it be the manager, whether it be players, there'll still be all the latest Boro news and reaction here on the channel, as always. But a big thank you for your support this season. Please as well continue to support this video by hitting a like on the video. Leave me a comment below with your thoughts on Boro's season and this game as a whole. Let me know your thoughts and feelings and where you think Boro need to go next. And until the next one, thank you so much for liking, subscribing and supporting the channel. You can also go and of course listen to these on the go on the podcast providers, which will be useful, especially for when the video drops for me and Chris later in the week. So check out my link tree in the description to find me on all the other social channels, all that good stuff as well. But until next time, guys, Boro's season is done, and quite honestly, I've never been more relieved. I'll catch you guys later in the week, where we'll try to dissect this season in more detail. So enjoy the rest of your bank holiday, and I'll see you all in the next one.